Welcome back to Daily 20, everybody. Today we are super lucky to have a special guest, Stephen. I know him as Galiphile, and I'm going to ask you about that. But welcome, good sir. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to start very quickly by saying I saw the interview that you did on Really Dicey's YouTube channel. I think it came out a couple of weeks ago or something. And so it was really good, by the way. I'm going to try and hit some different notes. But if there is some overlap, please forgive me. Okay? But also, massive kudos to you for, just coming on, a small growing channel like ours. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is I'm not a celebrity, so this is still cool for me. Like, doing these interviews is fun.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So first up, before we jump into the nitty gritty, where does Galiphile come from?
Galiphile is a name I've been using since EverQuest 1 for my bard, and it's just a name that I started using then, and I've just used it for basically everything since then. With most of my characters, I have a D&D Galiphile who's a bard. I have a Star Wars Galiphile who is a scholar. Galiphile is just my go-to.
Okay, that's cool. I love that. There's always those memorable characters that, for whatever reason, seem to stick with you. But my brother played this Goliath barbarian called Crom, and he was just his intelligence was -3 or something. But it was so much fun, and still to this day, we quote that character, when we play. So that's really, really cool. Okay, so I'm going to try and summarize how I see what you have done and see if I kind of hit the nail on the head, okay? Tell me if I'm near the mark. So you've done what I think many DMs who have a fandom, whatever it might be, and you have kind of taken this uber super user-friendly system that is 5e, and you've kind of put an outer shell of Star Wars, additionally with some significant tweaks under the hood. Is that a fair summary?
That's a pretty fair assessment. Yep.
Okay, cool. So, you've played role-playing games for a long time. What's your background in gaming?
Almost none. So I had never played any kind of tabletop role-playing game.
Okay.
Mentioned, if you read the preface, my buddy Ross invited me to play a 3.5 game with him and a few friends. We played maybe 10 sessions of that game, and then 5e came out, so we ended up porting to 5e. And my character was a bard named Galiphile, my first ever D&D character, and he was in 3.5. I don't know if it's just a bard issue or if it's a Steven issue, but he was terrible. I was just really useless. So we ported to 5e. We only played another probably half a dozen sessions before the game kind of fizzled out, as is the wont of D&D games.
It happens.
But, it got my hooks in. So from there, I started DMing I DM'd Lost Minds of Phandelver for a group of 4 or 5 friends, my then girlfriends. So we played through that, and we were all brand new. So it was fairly awful as well, but we had a lot of fun. And then from there, I wrote.
And sorry, just let me interrupt you because I'm interested. So when you DM, that's the first time you've DM'd, right? You jump into Minds of Phandelver. Were you already I'm not sure I like this rule, I'd like to tweak it, or were you quite homebrewy, or were you straight down the line?
Nope. I had basically, the only thing that I went into it with was I was still learning the rules at this point, so I was nowhere near what I am today. Basically, the best advice I read when I started DMing was that don't get bogged down by rules you don't know in the moment. Make a ruling, come back to it after the session, talk with your players if there's any big issue. So that was the only real thing I did. So sometimes I would make up a rule on the fly or misinterpret a rule, and we'd play through it. And then after the session, we'd be like, oh, we did this completely wrong. This is
that's awesome. That's awesome, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people who've never really DM'd before, certainly that's how I felt before I started DMing, is that fear of I don't really know the rules, but it doesn't really matter. You kind of learn the rules as you go, and you learn which ones you like more than others. So you almost start homebrewing naturally. It's almost like a natural process, I would say. but you fucking dived in like head first. Excuse my language. Like you did not like, you went hard. When you then, so tell us how did that come about? Like you jumped into Star Wars.
As far as Star Wars, okay, so we played through Fandelver. It is what it is. And then I ended up running a campaign for Baldur's Gate. So I had my players conveniently had never played that game. So I wrote a really quick and terrible homebrew of the first game of Baldur's Gate series. We played through that, had fun. And then after that was done, I decided I was like, well, let's try something new. My buddy Ricky, who was part of that group in particular, was also like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, absolutely huge.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. Don't worry. Look, I'm wearing like my geek on my heart as well. Yeah, tattoos. You got the ink. That's awesome, dude. We're gonna get into it.
Ricky was a big fan. Drew was pretty apathetic, and Eric was kind of a fan, I guess. So I was like, well, let's try a Star Wars game with these rules. So I made it quick and dirty over the course of about a month. There were 4 classes. They were literally trash. Half a dozen species. Backgrounds were the same. Basically, none of the polish of what is now Star Wars 5e.
Right. And this was like your first go at homebrewing.
This was my first go at homebrew, pretty much altogether, yeah. And this was the aforementioned 5.5 years ago. I don't even remember at this point. Right.
Okay. Wow. Super interesting. Now we have to get to Star Wars because that's the meat of this conversation as far as I'm concerned. I'm from like a generation who didn't really like wasn't there to watch the original films like in the cinema, but I grew up with an older brother who was like, dude, I fucking sat through like all 3 movies in one sitting. Like, you don't understand. So I like Star Wars for me was, before I even really had like a sense, it was already my favorite movies. They were already my favorite movies. Like, what was your in to Star Wars? What was the thing that got you in?
About Star Wars, I honestly don't know what the chicken or egg was. I know that I owned the movies on VHS. And I know that I saw the remastered versions when they re-released in the 90s.
Yes.
So, I don't know if it was the movies, the VHS that got me into Star Wars, or if it was the cinema movies or whatever. But basically from there, it was just like straight on obsession, toys, books, everything Star Wars.
Yeah, I see your shelves, which are
this is all Lego. Awesome. This is actually for D&D. These are for, so I mean, not now because it's COVID, so there's no tabletop game house, but this is all for D&D.
Yeah, I'm a miniature collector and painter, so I have like my, ATST from Imperial Assault and stuff like that. Like I love painting them as well.
Yeah, mine's a little bigger.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not comparing.
Come on now. Okay, so that's awesome. So you use the Lego for the D&D stuff, and so did you like deep dive into like, any of, was the prequels your generation, or because I there was a long period of time for me where there was like nothing. There was books and like the Thrawn trilogy and
the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. Like the X-Wing series, Rogue Squadron, stuff like that.
I love those books, yeah.
Yeah, me too, man. Like we'll talk about like what's going on now, but a little bit later. But so like you deep dive like everything you're consuming.
So I've read all 10 of the Rogue Squadron books. I've read all 5 of the Thrawn books. And I've read some other stuff. None of the new canon stuff I haven't actually started yet. And it's something I've read like, once I start, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to plow through everything that exists.
Okay.
So I haven't read any of the new stuff. I never really got into the comics. And then like I read like the children's Star Wars books, like because I was a kid. This was so that's really the majority of what I've read.
Right. And are you a big gamer, like computer games and stuff like that? Is that
video games? I'm an obsessive person. So like I'll pick a video game or I'll pick whatever my focus is at a point, and that's all that I do to the exclusion of all else. Like right now, I played in the last probably 2 months. I played probably like 500 hours of Fallout 4 because that's my current obsession.
Okay.
Now, like I fizzled out like 2 days ago, so now I'll probably go on Netflix and watch 10 hours a day of some TV show until I'm done with it, and then I'll start something else.
Okay, so you're one of those. You kind of stick to something almost like to completion, which beggars the question, why would you take on like? Well, no, I mean the SW5E, right? Like it's just so well done. Like this is the difference. This is what like kind of blew me away about it when it was first brought up to me. And I'll just explain how it came about just for context. But so my brother, and who's the person who got me into Star Wars, like we've been talking about playing a role-playing Star Wars for fucking years. And we've been looking at FFG, at the Fantasy Flight Games version, Age of Rebellion and Edge of the Empire and all that stuff. And like I'm reticent with new systems just because, you know, it took me so long to learn like the rules of D&D that I'm like, why would I do any other game? Just reskin it, right? So I get like where you came from totally. But I tried those and I didn't like it. And then a good friend and collaborator, Eric, he told me about SW5E and he showed me the website, and I was just blown away. Like the player's handbook, the monster manual, which is it Scum, not Scum and Villainy, it's Skull and Villainy, right? Which is the monster manual and stuff. Like, at what point did you decide that you were going to go that far?
So this is okay. So I 5.5 years ago, whatever, started this first version, 4 classes, trash. Played a campaign for 3 or 4 months before that group had to break up because of work issues, and then I never touched it again. About 3 years ago, in fact, it'll be 3 years ago next month, I started an office job that I still do to this day. That was very, very boring.
Okay.
And I had once I kind of like banged out the basics, I only did about 10 or 15 hours of work a week, and I was in an office setting for 40 hours by myself. So I was looking for a way to kill time. So that's kind of when I came back to Star Wars 5e and basically took the trash I had written before and threw it away, and then just started with the player's handbook from scratch. Wrote out the whole thing, and then released it more or less on a whim on the D&D Next subreddit in June of 2018 now. So it'll be 3 years in June.
Wow.
And then from there, it just kind of spiraled out of control.
So the reaction was, another one of these, or were people like super positive?
For the most part, it's positive. So I get a lot of people that understand. So this is I'm going to emphasize this word understand, because the people that understand what I'm doing, and that it's not Saga to 5e, it's not Edge of the Empire, it's not any of these things. It's 5e to Star Wars. So people that understand that and, you know, like 5e, really, really like, have all pretty much unanimously liked this project on the whole, if they don't like certain small parts of it, which I've made a significant number of design changes from 5e that are contested. I don't care. It's my choice, but that is what it is. So people that understand it, you know, they all have really been receptive, really appreciated it, giving me good feedback. You know, this would not be anywhere near what it is today if I hadn't been getting feedback for almost 3 years now. And then I get a lot of stupid responses from people that are like, don't like Star Wars and don't like 5e, so they don't like Star Wars 5e. It's like, well, no shit. This isn't for you.
Like, you know, why are you telling me? Exactly.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is.
Okay. Now, you know, with just everything that's been happening with the pandemic and life in general, like it's had an impact on a lot of like gaming tables and groups. And how has it affected you? Has it affected the you know, the tenor of you know, are you able to devote more time to, you know, doing some more extended content, more classes, more feats, whatever it might be? Or has it like just kind of drained you of a desire to keep it up?
So I've been working from home actually for almost exactly a year, almost a year to the day actually today. So that has ultimately been bad for Star Wars 5e. Not because the issue is that when I was working in an office, I couldn't do anything of you know, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't play video games during my idle time, and now I can do that. So now when I'm working and I'm done with my work for the day, I play Fallout 4 for 5 hours while I wait for things to happen and then deal with them as they arise. So I couldn't do that in an office, so I was literally just always working on this. So ultimately, my focus has diminished a little bit over time. I'm still trying to maintain quarterly updates to core content, at least quarterly, and then expanded content release every Thursday on the dot. So I'm still maintaining that, and that won't change for the foreseeable future. And having had my 1 year lull now of doing whatever I want during the day, my Steam is picking back up, and I've actually started working on the 5th book But
Oh, awesome. Can you tell us about that?
yeah, so it's Galactic Strongholds. Anybody who's on the Discord would already know this. So basically, I'm working on a similar idea to. So it's kind of like if you read Starships of the Galaxy, it's kind of like a bifurcation of those rules in that there are strongholds is a big portion of it, and it's going to use the same kind of tier system. But it's not size locked like starships are because the restrictions are the plot of land you have, the amount of space you have to build versus
Right.
like
So you
size
can,
categories
yeah,
of ships. So that's the real deviation. And then it's also going to have a lot of focus on mass combat and vehicles. So those would be the two huge focal points of Galactic Strongholds.
Very
I
cool.
have no ETA.
Yeah. Right. And is it obviously you get kind of people to play test, do you, or like how does it work with when you're trying to develop something like this?
Really speaking, the playtesting is the release. So like the player's handbook is basically done at this point. As far as playtesting is concerned, most of the changes that are made in there are going to be minor and don't really necessitate a significant amount of playtesting. It's just kind of smoothing things out, toning things down as needed. For the other books, so Wretched Hives is still very fledgling. Starships, just had a pretty big overhaul, but still needs a lot of work. Galactic Strongholds as well. So when I do these updates to it, I'm basically putting it out there for everybody to use from a single point of contact. So the book is updated, the website is updated. They use these rules. I get feedback. I polish. I re-release. So it's basically constant beta. This is not going to be a finished product anytime soon.
Right. And that's I guess that brings up a good point. Like, knowing that obviously you're doing this as a fan of both Star Wars and D&D, even though D&D kind of has a system for people to be able to publish stuff. I mean, this has never seen the light of day on a shelf, right? Like, are you okay with that? Is that like something that you care about?
As far as like a book that I sell and people can buy at a gaming store, I don't care. I'm not really a money motivated person. I have enough money to do what I want, and I'll retire safely. So that's all I really care about.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And so you've got Scum and Villainy, which is the monster manual. You've got the Starships, which deals with like ship combat and stuff like that. Now is it the one which has the organizations?
Wretched Hives.
Wretched Hives, that's it. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of came about?
Sure, yeah. So Wretched Hives, I started, it's probably a year and a half old now, give or take. So the goal of Wretched Hives, so each book is, the goal is everybody has to use the player's handbook, period. If you're not using that, get out of my room, don't talk to me. The idea, Scum and Villainy is the second most important book because you need monsters to fight. And then from there, all of the other books that happen, which is right now Starships of the Galaxy, Wretched Hives, Galactic Strongholds, will all be separate completely. So they're not dependent on each other. They're just dependent on you using really the core player handbook and Scum and Villainy. So Wretched Hives focuses on factions. So people can join, they can join the Galactic Republic, they can join the Sith Empire, they can join the Mandalorians, whatever it wants. So it's basically just the mechanical benefits and requirements of joining factions like that, and then or creating your own faction, leveling it up, things like that.
Right.
That's a big portion of it. There will also be like interfaction conflict rules, which I'm still working on, and I still don't really know how I want to work, but it's something that is, it is something that's been simmering for a while. The second portion of the book, well, I guess there's three real portions of this one. So the second portion is just enhanced items, which are just magic items. Magic items don't make sense for Star Wars. Enhanced items do. It's the same system otherwise, with some subsystems that I've created that I'm pretty proud of.
Right.
And then finally, it focuses on like activities in cities. So it focuses on downtime rules, which I've modeled mostly after the ones presented in Xanathar's, where they use like the D100 tables, because I really like that system. I like the rolling system. So there's like 20 different downtime activities you can perform in a city.
Yeah.
And then I've also, some of them have what's called uptime rules, which is a stupid word that I made as the opposite of downtime. And it's so downtime is like happens between sessions. It's not a focal point of an adventure. Uptime is for if you want to do that thing quick and dirty, like gambling.
Very cool. So is a lot of that just like stuff that you've always kind of wanted to apply to your D&D games, that you're like, yeah, let's like throw this in? Or is it do you ever like take on suggestions from the community about like what might be a fun addition?
I don't take specific suggestions so much as pay attention to communication. So the Discord is where all the development takes place. So I'll kind of like lurk and follow conversations and see what people are talking about, and have that really kind of like get the wheels turning and encourage an idea, and from there I'll develop it further. So that's how some of these things come to place. As far as Wretched Hives, beyond like the magic item system, which is the very basic 5e stuff, everything else in there was more or less encouraged by the Discord, as far as like people talked about something similar, and it kind of gave me an idea, and I just rolled with it from there, and so on and so forth.
Very cool. And like you mentioned that you were quite proud of a couple of things in that particular book. Overall, is there something in particular, like a particularly hard nut to crack, or just something that you are particularly proud of?
Well, my favorite part of Wretched Hives is the modifiable item system I wrote. I think it's pretty clever, and I think it does when people finally understand the rules for it, which is literally one page of rules. It's not that hard. But when people finally understand the rules for it, it really harkens back to like the system in KOTOR of upgrading items, where you find items and they have slots. You can put new pieces in the slots to make the item better. So you can use a singular item and have it evolve over time, as opposed to just like a sentient magic item for 5e. So I'm very fond of that system. I really like how cybernetic augmentations have been done. We've done for Star Wars 5e. I really like the droid parts, droid customization system. I'm proud of all those quite a bit. The hard nut to crack is really how the factions are going to, how faction conflict is going to interact, and I think part of that is going to really be reliant on how mass combat rules work. So I'm not really too focused on it right now until I get that portion of Wretched Hive or Galactic Strongholds written out. The goal being that they'll synergize, so you can play them side by side, but not necessarily require each other. So
Okay, that's very cool. And it's also cool that you have like just stuff that people can add to it, because like, just like you say, player's handbook, monster manual, that's all you really need. That's I had my first session using the system the other day, and we had such a blast. Like I set so I'd never done the you wake up in a cell kind of, you have none of your shit like opening to a campaign. So I decided to kind of do that. And like I had a flash where I was like, you know what? Like I love The Mandalorian. Like I'm just obsessed with it. And I thought, why not make it that they were on the ship in episode 6 of the season 1, where he goes in to break someone out, So I set up there and we went through it. It was just flipping amazing. And honestly, like, obviously you're going to kind of gravitate towards the Force stuff when you see something like this, but I just really liked how you had made it almost better than the magic system in 5e, which is always one of my personal gripes.
Vancian magic. I guess I don't know if this is technically Vancian magic in 5e anymore, but the spell slot system, I just find it so restrictive, and it makes so much sense. So like the spell point system that we use for Star Wars 5e is derived from the spell points variant from DMG for 5e. It's not like I wrote this from scratch. I basically figured this out, and I think it works very well. I actually had one of my players who was really fond of it roll it backwards and play it in 5e, and it actually doesn't feel right in 5e. The only class that really works for is sorcerer, because spell points make sense for a sorcerer, but it doesn't really make sense for wizards and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting.
But I find that fascinating because I own the DMG. I've never read that section. I'll be honest with you. I think most of the DMG I just haven't read. So when someone goes out and puts something as well polished like this, and as also, it obviously helps that I'm in for Star Wars, like whatever it is, right? But it's such a well polished system, it feels to me, and I honestly can't wait to be playing in it every week.
The system is, I'm happy with this system now. It was really bad when it first came out. It was literally just 5e with a with Star Wars paint on it, poorly applied, and it wasn't great. I'm much happier with it now. So the bones 5e are still there. People can jump from that setting to this one. I will say Star Wars 5e is a little less accommodating for new players because it's a little more mechanically interactive and a little more in depth than base 5e is. For instance, one of the changes I made, every class in 5e, the best designed class mechanically is Warlock because they have multiple layers of customization beyond just archetype. That's one of the things I really dislike about basically every class in 5e is that once you choose your archetype, unless you have spellcasting, you're basically done making decisions for your character. Occasional feats and things like that. So one of the big things with Star Wars 5e is that every class has 2 layers of customization. Like Warlocks have those invocations, so every class has something like that.
That's kind of brilliant because I agree. Like, I mean, it's why Warlock is one of the most popular classes, definitely.
Yep, and of course the downside of that. So it's much better for players who are experienced and want a little more grit. It's just a little bit more daunting for players who are new and have never done it before. So there is a balance trade-off. A new player could somebody who's never played D&D before could come into Star Wars 5e and understand it pretty quickly. In fact, when I ran my campaign, 2 of my players were brand new and had never played any kind of D&D before, and they both did very well. So it's still there, but it is a little bit more daunting than traditional 5e.
Interesting. Okay, so have you ever had someone like break the game for you? Like, I don't know. I have, again, this is actually the same friend who showed me Star Wars 5e. He has this ability to, we're playing Symbaroum right now, which is like this Swedish RPG, and he's just found a way to make this character who is just just a beast, like, really kind of taking advantage of not necessarily loopholes, but synergy, right? Min-maxing, that kind of thing. Has that happened to you? As someone kind of said, oh dude, I would change this because
Yeah, that's how a lot of changes happen too. For instance, one of the most ridiculous interactions in 5e is paladin sorcerer interactions with, or like paladin warlock, basically.
Yeah, the charisma casters.
Yeah. So short rest recharge for paladin using 5th level spell slots to smite and get him back a short rest. Like, those interactions are just bullshit. So that's one of the things where that was an issue early on in Star Wars 5e, not the short rest part, but like multi-classing and scaling spell slots and stuff like that. So now Divine Smite for Paladin, or for Guardians, which is called Force Empowered Strikes, now it scales with class level, not slot level. So no more multi-class bullshit. So I have tried to tone down those things when they become oppressive. Ultimately, because of the multiple layers of customization in 5e and Star Wars 5e, the characters are a little bit more powerful than they are in 5e, which I think feels better as a player. But if you put a character side by side from each system, the Star Wars 5e is probably going to trounce the other one.
Interesting. But I also think that's okay. I think that's one of the things that I appreciated about like your implementation of giving like a background feat, for example, and like I give a feat at first level just because I think it's cool. Like, and I do a heroic array, starting array, which is like 16, 15, 13, 12, 10, 8 or something like that. So, like, I want my players to feel like the heroes of the story. So, to me, that makes complete sense, I'll be honest with you. I was super, super excited by the Sentinel, though, and the fighting styles. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep, so we'll go with Sentinel. So Sentinel was originally... Sentinel has probably undergone the most change since the initial release of Star Wars 5e, because of all 10 classes, it's the most original. Like, all of the other classes have some kind of bones on which they're based. Like, Consular is very clearly a bastardization of Wizard, and Sorcerer, Fighter is Fighter, Monk is Monk, etc. So Sentinel has seen a lot of changes. It's now got it's always had, but it has its unique scaling in casting between like Paladin and Wizard. So it's got 7th level power max instead of 5 and 9. So that's really fun, and it's got really strong focus on using at will powers, cantrips, if you will. and using them in unique ways. So I'm very happy with how Sentinel is now, and I think it's way less overpowered than it was previously.
Right.
So I think that's pretty standard. So fighting styles is actually, when I mentioned before that some people don't agree with changes that I made, fighting styles is the one that I was talking about. When this first change happened last June, this was a big thing that I worked on with one of my moderators who does a lot of his own actual D&D content. He writes what's called Grit and Glory, if you've ever heard of that, which is a huge rules overhaul for 5e that adds a lot of like grit to.
Okay, I haven't, but now I will look into it, and I will encourage all my watchers go and watch Grit and Glory.
So his name is Storm Chaser. So he and I and a couple of people on his server worked back, basically reverse engineered fighting styles. So what we did was twofold. Fighting styles in 5e offer flat bonuses. Okay. Part of the best part of 5e is that it simplifies these numbers, so you don't have this bullshit growth of adding 25 to an attack modifier and things like that. So we got rid of all the flat modifiers. And what it did is, I'm going to step aside for a second. So I say best defined classes. Action economy in 5e is not taken advantage of well. So a character has an action, a bonus action, a reaction. The only class that really utilizes that well in 5e is Rogue. So Rogue has actions. Everybody has actions.
Evasion,
cutting action for bonus action.
Cutting action.
And uncanny dodge. So that
reaction,
Rogue at this level uses all 3 actions every turn, and they are beautiful. So what we did with fighting styles is we broke down all the flat modifiers, and then for the most part, every fighting style offers a bonus action that enhances that style in some way. For instance, dueling, which is going to be your simple one-handed weapon and shield or no other weapon, offers the ability to, if you miss with an attack, you can re-roll it using your bonus action, or you can use your bonus action to attempt to get advantage on an attack roll. So that's how dueling works. It doesn't give you +2 to damage anymore. Instead, it offers these new features with your bonus action. So that was one of the defining pillars of the new fighting styles. And then we expanded them out. So there's actually, for Star Wars 5e, there's 24 fighting styles now.
Yeah, wow.
Storm Chaser uses 20 of those because some of them don't make sense for 5th edition. Like explosives fighting style doesn't make sense because there are no grenades in 5th edition.
Right.
So the goal being that every fighting style, of course, most of them use bonus actions to enhance that play style in some way or enable that play style in some way. Additionally, in 5e, there are feats that affect certain fighting style, not styles of fighting. So like Great Weapon Mastery feat offers this really cool feature that lets you power attack, essentially, take a penalty to attack, bonus damage.
Yeah, same as Sharpshooter for like arrows. Right.
So what we did is those are all gone, and instead there's a mastery that goes with every fighting style. So like those features were appropriated. So Great Weapon Mastery, which is still pretty close, offers you can take a penalty to attack to do extra damage, and so there's a fighting mastery for every fighting style that goes along with it.
Right. So you've taken that option out of the feats and you've put it into the fighting styles, therefore making the fighting masteries, like therefore making them that much more interesting.
Right. And so it's layered too. So like you could take duelist style when you get your fighting style from your class, and then you can take the fighting mastery feat, which lets you take any fighting mastery.
Yes,
it sounds
really
complicated, but it's really not if you actually walk through it. So you choose any fighting mastery, and you could choose duelist mastery, which will make you a better duelist, or you could take onslaught mastery, which is really focused on tripping people and charging and stuff like that. So you can mix and match if the synergy is there.
And I think that's probably one of the things that I found very exciting during the kind of character creation part that we did, was like just realizing how many more options you have in this system as opposed to in D&D, which in 5e, which, you know, again, I love 5e. I started a D&D channel because I like it that much, right? Like, but there are always little things that you're like, oh God, I wish this was a little bit different, you know, and you've kind of manifested them for a large, you know, in a large part. Like I can't say I know the ins and out completely, but it's very, very exciting. So what comes next? What's, like, you know, the next steps for you?
Sure. All right. So you're going to get inside information here. I haven't told. The only people that know this are the moderators on my Discord right now. So
Dirty 20 exclusive. I love it.
Yep. There you go. So this is going to get fairly verbose. I apologize. So there are going to be 6 books total.
Okay.
Four of those books exist. Galactic Strongholds is the fifth book. And then the sixth book is just going to be character options. So it's not going to be like any new huge layer that gets added to the game.
Mm-hmm.
In the player's handbook, there are 10 classes. There will only ever be 10 classes. I will never adopt an additional class. I'm not going to pull any artificer nonsense, adding it to an additional book. No, we're done with that. Each class has 4 archetypes, so 40 archetypes. There are 30 species in the player's handbook, and then there are 20 backgrounds in the player's handbook. So that's 20, 30, and 40. The non-Starships books, the other 4 books are going to get that same allocation. So eventually we're working on, this is really what the expanded content releases are weekly, is we're going to have 150 species. There's going to be 200 total archetypes, 20 for each class, and there's going to be 100 backgrounds. And then the last book is going to offer so there's a part of, I think it's in Xanathar's, where it really helps you flesh out the backstory of your character.
Yes. This is your story. It's called the section.
Yeah, so that's going to be a big focus of the sixth book, is basically just helping you build and create a better character. And it's going to offer randomization tables for all of.
Nice. I love a good random table.
Class, archetype. Yep. So the whole idea is going to be like, there's this great website called Who the Fuck Is My D&D Character? And you just hit a random button and it generates a character for you and like a little story and everything. It's amazing. So I want to have the same idea in table form for Star Wars 5e.
Awesome. Oh my God. I love it. You heard it here first, people. It's a shame we can't invest, but never mind. Okay. So in terms of you get those 6 books done, is that like, okay, that's it, I'm moving on?
Well, it's been 3 years now, and the player's handbook is the only thing even close to done. And the player's handbook is rooted the most in 5e, and that most of the mechanics there were the most polished when I started. So in reality, this is not going to come to fruition for years, right? So it's at least 2 or 3 years out before I can say all 6 books are done. And what do I expect to happen? Well, as far as 5e, I don't expect 5e to move on anytime soon. I think we're going to see 5.5 in the same way we saw 3.5. That's going to fix interactions. I think that's probably going to be the thing that happens first. And depending on what happens there, we'll see what happens with Star Wars 5.
It's funny. I saw someone tweet out, I think, that this is the longest that D&D has been in any edition, which is kind of still a little bit mind-blowing to me, because 5th edition still feels quite fresh. It doesn't feel as stale as like 3.5 got, and 4th was what it was. But yeah, it like I feel like I would be upset, and a lot of the fandom would be upset if it was like, 6th edition 2023. I think it will survive for a while.
Yeah, I think we've got at least another 5 years on 5e. I'm going to say 5.5 would qualify. I think what they're going to do is they're going to release 5.5, and they're basically, it's going to be the same bare bones rules, and they're just going to fix the things that people don't like. But it's not going to change materially. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think most of the fixes that 5e needs, I've already incorporated in Star Wars 5e, so it doesn't really concern me that much, but I'll pay attention.
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, you're like, I did that like 3 years ago, guys.
You're 3 years behind.
Yeah. I love it. Like, do you, I love miniatures. I love playing with maps and stuff like that. Do you ascribe to the whole like online VTT thing?
I'm a very introverted person, despite how I might sound in this interview. I'm very solitary. One of the only things I really like getting together and with people and doing is playing D&D in person. For the most part, I would rather interact with everybody online. So I am not there yet. I don't play Star Wars 5e almost at all. I've played probably 3 times in 3 years. Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I'm a forever DM.
Yeah,
as far as in real
I get
life.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't try. I really like the social aspect of D&D, and that's the thing that really that's what really sells me on it. The mechanics and building characters and stuff is fun, but as far as playing it, I really like having everybody in a room and doing it together. So I think the same. Yeah, I think online D&D is wonderful. I think Roll20 and Foundry has really good Star Wars 5e support for those.
I wanted to ask you about that because I found out that Foundry has a pretty good support for SW5e. That's kind of cool. I kind of more and more I use Fantasy Grounds, and more I'm like, Foundry just sounds like the way to go. you know, like I've thrown so much money at Fantasy Grounds, you know, that I'm like, oh God, am I really not gonna? It's why Apple has me as well, because, you know, I've spent so much on the bloody App Store. Okay. So you're the Forever DM. Do you think that is? I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit sad. Like I'm really lucky. I have a group where like everyone DMs, and so we take it in turns. So whenever it comes to like, oh guys, I'm not feeling it. Like I want to take a break. I want to play. There's always someone who's like, yeah, you know. And in fact, like I get to the point where I'm like, now I'm getting antsy to start DMing again. But yeah, with, you know, the pandemic and everything, it's been so hard, you know. But honestly, the online stuff has kind of been a lifesaver for me.
Yep. I mean, 2020 was Dungeons and Dragons' best year in history.
Really?
And that tells you, yep, that was they were supposed to about on D&D Next as the best year that they've had in history, and it makes sense because online D&D is a thing. Fifth edition is accessible to new players. A lot of the stigma for D&D is gone, so I mean, it makes sense to me that that's the case. But
yes,
it is awesome. I played in a one shot with my moderators. One of them, Todd Moonbounce, who does there's a podcast series called Dungeon Jedi Masters. If you're really interested, you can check that out. It's mostly about Star Wars.
I have been watching some of their shit, and I've totally stolen his idea of Jedi Dungeon Master. Like when I play, that's what people have to call me.
Technically, the term for Star Wars 5e is GM because it's Game Master, Grandmaster, or Grand Moff. So you've got those for choice.
Oh, I like that. Grand Moff. Oh, I like that. GM. See, so I was always like more into like the Empire and like Tarkin and Vader and all that kind of shit. Were you more Rebel or more Empire?
I am very much scoundrel. I'm 100%. I'm
Scum and villainy
all day. Yeah, like I played Star Wars: The Old Republic off and on since it came out. Pre-ordered it, had the collector's edition, everything. Scoundrel all day. Get out of
here. Nice. Yep. Okay. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for this. Like, it's been a real joy to get to talk to you. And this is actually going to be kicking off. Oh, this is kind of an announcement for you people. This is going to be kicking off a whole series on homebrew because, you know, you have totally, Stephen, inspired me to like look at the things that I want to be different in my games and be like, I can. It's within my power to try to fix it, you know? Yep. So thank you for your inspiration. And once again, thank you for your time, my friend.
Absolutely.
Been a joy.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and as always, keep slaying. Oh, you got to say keep slaying, Stephen, for the people at home.
Keep slaying, Stephen.
No, not with your name at the end.
Keep slaying.
There you go. All right, bye. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J Cherot. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.